those wonderful toys.
Welcome back to the channel. As promised, we will be unboxing the Mcfarlane Toys DC Direct Batman the Animated Series Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow. In this video, we will also be assembling the Build-A-Figure, which is of course Condiment King. At the end of the video, I will also give my overall thoughts on the line and let you know which figures I liked best and which ones I thought needed a little bit more work.
Put some effort into it!
If you haven't checked out my previous video where I unboxed the Batman and Robin from this line, then please do so. I should also point out that Mcfarlane Toys and DC Direct also released the Bat Cycle from Batman the Animated Series, as well as a solo release for Alfred. I haven't acquired either of them just yet, but when I do, you could expect unboxing videos for them as well.
Come on. Do it. Do it!
But back to the task at hand. Today we'll be talking about the villains of this line. That being, of course, Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow, and Condiment King. I have to say, I really like the choice of villains for this first line. They could have went with the obvious choices of Joker and Catwoman, but they decided to do things a little bit different. Instead, we get Mr. Freeze and possibly what is one of his most iconic interpretations. The way that they made this character more of a tragic figure in that Heart of Ice episode. It's just brilliant stuff that has always stuck with me as a fan. And Scarecrow has always been one of my favorites as well. And I would say his look in this series is pretty iconic also. And then you have Condiment King, which is a somewhat obscure character who has gained kind of a cult following, mostly due to the ridiculous nature of his character. One thing I will say is that if this line continues, I wouldn't mind them doing some more deep cuts, especially with Build-A-Figures. Characters such as Maxie Zeus or Lockup come to mind as possibilities. Okay, so without any further ado, we'll get right into the unboxing, and we're going to start with Mr. Freeze.
Alright, everyone. Chill.
Alright, so right off the bat, of course, we get the trading card, as we get with every figure. As far as the accessories go, for the Build-A-Figure, we have his ketchup and mustard shooter and backpack, which is pretty cool. As for Mr. Freeze, obviously we get an assortment of hands. This is one positive that I can say for this line, is there is no shortage of extra hands. They give you a healthy variety for sure. We got open hands, we got grasping hands, we got fists, anything you could ever need pretty much. And we also have, of course, his freeze gun. One thing I forgot to mention in the previous videos I did with Batman and Robin is these figures don't come with stands, which I found to be kind of interesting because Mcfarlane usually does include stands with his figures. And after the video, I will say I had a difficult time standing Batman and Robin up without a stand. So that's something to think about also with these figures.
I'm having trouble.
Outside of that though, let's get back to Mr. Freeze. First impressions of this figure, I actually like him a lot better than I like the Batman and Robin figure. For whatever reason, the awkward shading is still on this figure, but it's less noticeable on this one. Maybe it's the color scheme, it just goes better with the blue, the gray, the purple, and the black. But my eyes aren't really drawn to the awkward shading like they were on the Batman and Robin figure. This Mr. Freeze also comes with a removable freeze tank. Pretty cool. And this is something that I thought was interesting. His helmet is actually removable. I remember most of the Mr. Freeze figures from the 90s never had removable helmets, so it is kind of interesting that they decided to make this one removable. I appreciate that. Some people wanted me to bring up the articulation in these figures because I didn't really talk about it too much in the last video, simply because articulation isn't a huge deal for me. I mean, most of the time these figures are just up on a shelf. So it's not really a deal breaker for me like it is for everyone else, but I understand why people want to know more about the articulation on these figures. And I will say the articulation isn't the best. They're a bit stiff in some areas, especially with the arms. I pointed this out with the Robin figure as well. Very difficult articulation with his rubber cape. And it's kind of a similar situation here with Mr. Freeze's suit. As far as the likeness goes, I think they nailed it. Everything from his look, to his color scheme, to his physique, which was a problem for me with the Batman figure. But on this figure, he looks like he's supposed to look. He looks like he was cut right out of the series, which is a vast improvement over the Batman figure in my opinion. Overall, I have to say I much rather prefer this figure so far than the other two that I opened. I think this looks pretty great actually, but we'll see how he stacks up to the rest of the line at the end of this video. But for right now, we're going to move on to the Scarecrow.
Crane?
Just like the rest of the figures, The Scarecrow comes with the trading card. As for the accessories, we have the head and torso of the Condiment King for the Build-A-Figure. And for Scarecrow, for whatever reason, we got gypped out on some hands. He only has 2 sets of hands, whereas the rest of the figures all had multiple. Not really sure why. Scarecrow has open hands, and he has 1 gripping hand and 1 fist. Don't know why they decided to cut back on the variety with Scarecrow, but that's what they did. We also have his iconic weapon, the sickle. This is called a sickle, right? I'm pretty sure it is. And we have an alternate head for Scarecrow. I guess the head is the trade-off. That's why we didn't get more hands. We get a unmasked Jonathan Crane head instead. It's kind of cool, I guess, but I think I'd rather have the extra hands. I don't know, when I think of Scarecrow, I just don't think of him being unmasked that much to where we need a unmasked head for the figure, but it's okay. I can probably live with that. As for the figure itself, once again, far superior to the Batman and Robin figure, in my opinion. I don't know what it is about the villain figures, but you just barely notice the awkward shading that you noticed on the Batman and Robin figure. I'm just assuming it has to do with the colorful nature of the figures, or the color schemes maybe, just lend itself to the shading a bit more. But once again, the likeness, the physique, the colors, everything is just perfect with this figure. Extremely skinny legs, which was a problem with Robin also. So this is going to be a difficult figure to stand up without a stand also. One thing I'm really impressed with on the Scarecrow figure is definitely the head. Now the hat is molded on, it's not removable, which is fine. But I don't know, just the hair, the face, everything about it. I mean, he's just kind of nightmare fuel when you really think about it. Okay, up next is what everyone's been waiting for. This is the Condiment King Build-A-Figure, fully assembled. Quick pro tip, it's a good idea to put his pack on before putting on both arms. And also be careful with the arms when putting them in. I had a little bit of difficulty. I was a little bit scared I was going to break the peg. I didn't, but it was kind of stiff getting them on.
That's what she said.
My initial impression of this figure is, well, first of all, I can't believe I even have a figure of Condiment King. But other than that, he's huge. I'm going to bring in the Batman figure really quick here, because as you can see, he's significantly bigger than Batman is. I don't remember if that's how it was in the show, but it was really striking to me and really obvious that this is easily the biggest figure in the line. And I just didn't realize, I guess, that Condiment King was such a large presence physically in the Batman the Animated Series. Also, as far as the shading goes, it's pretty good on his suit, but what I did notice is he has the diseased look like Robin does on his face. And that's when it kind of hit me. I think the reason that the Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow figure look better is there's no skin tones on those figures. The shading on the skin tones, I think, is what throws it off most and what makes it look the most awkward. You can just kind of see it there. He just looks like, again, he has some kind of skin disease.
Makes perfect sense.
As far as the rest of the figure goes, I feel like he has a bit more range of motion. Maybe that's because he's the Build-A-Figure, I don't know. But he's got a bit more range of motion than the other figures do, which is a plus. I absolutely love his outfit. I don't know why I haven't noticed this before, but he's wearing actual tighty-whities over his tights, which is pretty funny when you think about it. And he's got kind of that pickle hat thing. I don't even know what that's supposed to be. They also give you little slots in his back so his pack can stick into him. Helps it to stay on a little bit better. I don't know if I like him quite as much as Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow, but I do think he's, again, a lot better than the Batman and Robin figures. Once again, the likeness, the color scheme, everything is great. Not entirely sure, again, about the physique. He looks a lot bigger than I remember. It's interesting. They made Condiment King look bulky, and they kind of slimmed down Batman. I'm not really sure why they did that. Why couldn't they both be bulky? That's what I'm saying. And right now we're going to bring all the figures in, and we're going to get a good look at all of them together, and then I'll give my final say on the line. Okay, here's the whole lineup, and as far as how I would rank them, I have them pretty much in order right here. I think, interestingly enough, the Batman figure is my least favorite. I just think this figure leaves a lot to be desired. It could have done with a lot less shading, a bit different physique, a bulkier physique, I think would have helped it out a lot. Robin would be next. Better than the Batman, but also has its issues, especially with the articulation with the rubber cape, and of course the infected looking shading on his face.
Holy rusted metal, Batman!
Next I would go Condiment King. I actually really like this figure, but to me the other two figures are just a little bit better. I do like the novelty of having a Condiment King figure. I think that's pretty cool. Again, not sure about his size, and he does have a similar problem as Robin with the shading on the face, shading on the skin tones, but overall a very fun figure. Next I think would be Scarecrow. I think this figure looks great. He's lacking a little bit with the accessories. They decided to go with less hands and an alternate head, which I don't necessarily think that I'll ever use. And the number one for me is definitely Mr. Freeze. I think they nailed this figure, honestly. Outside of the articulation, which is just kind of a little bit of a problem on all of them, I think Mr. Freeze, as far as accessories, likeness, just the overall presentation of the figure, I think is spot on. Even the shading is less noticeable on this figure than it is on all the other ones. So have you picked up this line, and if so, were you impressed with it? Were you a little bit disappointed? I find myself somewhere in the middle. I'm a little bit underwhelmed in some aspects, but I do like other aspects of it. But let me know what you thought about this line in the comments down below, and we'll see you next time right here on Collector Shift.
Y'all be cool. Right on.